The Rangers are having a miserable time at Madison Square Garden this season. We tell you why that's the case. Also, the power play is terrible.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1418 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So another day, another miserable performance by the Rangers in Madison Square Garden. And for those of you keeping track at home, this team is now 0-5-1 at the Garden to start the season. They conversely are 6-1-1 on the road. I was joking after the game on social media, but at this point, obviously it's not literally going to happen in real life. I might actually do this. Cancel all the home games the rest of the season. Have the Rangers play all of their games on the road the rest of the way, because it's getting to the point where, it's a semi-small sample size, but I don't think this is something that can be ignored at this point either. It's very clearly a trend. So we're going to talk about all these issues that the Rangers are having at Madison Square Garden to start the season. We're also going to work our way to the miserable time that the Rangers are having with their special teams. The power play a lot more so than the PK, but the PK obviously gave up a goal last night as well. And then also going to tell you why this is one of the most boring third periods I've ever seen in my life watching hockey, and some of you might be right there with me. But again, we begin with all these, home woes that the Rangers are having at Madison Square Garden. We've got some stats on this Ranger team at home so far this season through their first 6 games at home. They're going to blow your mind. We're going to work our way to those. And when we kind of look at the big picture of everything, but let's start with just this game specifically. Last night was absolutely pathetic. The Rangers in this game seem to be getting worse with every passing minute. The first 10, 12, 13 minutes of this game, it was pretty darn good. The Rangers did everything but score, and I know that people are tired of that as well, but at least they're buzzing in the offensive zone. They got some jump. They're creating some scoring chances. Their first power play was actually pretty good in this game. They got 4 shots on goal in that one and came close to scoring on a number of occasions, but the wheels just fell off a little bit past the midway point of the first period, and the Rangers just never really got back on track. The final 28 minutes of this game, the Rangers got a grand total. Are you sitting down? The Rangers got a grand total of 1 shot on goal. 1 shot on goal in 28 minutes. That is honestly insane. And that 1 shot on goal, it wasn't even really a shot. You or me could have stopped this one. It was a Sam Carrick dump in into the offensive zone that just happened to go on net. So that was the 1 shot on goal that the Rangers mustered in the final 28 minutes. That's just, it's insane. I know I just used that word, but that's what we're talking about here. 1 shot on goal in 28 minutes of hockey in a game in which you trail by 1 or 2 goals for the vast majority of it. Now, here's something else I want to mention as it pertains to these bizarre home and away splits that the Rangers have endured so far this season. I said multiple times during the preseason, the offseason, coming into this year with the Rangers, the 2025-2026 campaign, that I really felt that this is one of the more unpredictable Rangers seasons. I don't necessarily want to say in history, but how about in the history of Locked On New York Rangers? We'll say that because this is year number 7 of us, covering the Rangers here on Locked On New York Rangers. And I just felt there were so many X factors coming into this season. You get the coaching change. There's turmoil in the locker room this past season. There seems to be a bad relationship between some of the key players on this team, as well as the front office. Trouba's gone, Kreider's gone, even guys that were, mainstays on the blue line like Lindgren, Keandre Miller, they're gone. A lot of changes up and down this roster. And you've also got a situation where JT Miller is entering his first full season back with the Rangers. He's now the captain. You pick up Gavrikov to bolster the blue line a little bit. Some intriguing prospects for the Rangers as well. There's just a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of unknowns for this team going into the season. And for all those reasons, I had a really difficult time kind of putting my finger on exactly what kind of a year this is going to be for the New York Rangers. I figured that at the end of the season, I still do feel this way, this will be sort of a fringe playoff team. Ultimately, I do think they'll get in. But the reason I bring all this up is because even in a season where the theme, at least for me, maybe for some of you guys as well, the theme was to expect the unexpected, no one could have possibly seen this coming. Nobody could have possibly believed that this Ranger team would be this inept at home while basically being road warriors anytime they play a game anywhere other than Madison Square Garden. It's just a bizarre start to the season in that regard. Here's my working theory as far as why this is happening. And I mentioned this when we always record us Locked On hosts after the game is over. We record a short YouTube video and put it on YouTube right when the game ends. Did that last night. So for anybody that saw that, you might know where I'm going with this. This is just a guess. It's an educated guess at best, but this is my theory as far as why what the Rangers are doing is working on the road and why what they're doing at home is not working. It's because the Rangers right now are committed to playing defensive hockey, and that's a good thing. It's nice that they've bought into the system, and it does seem like more often than not, the Rangers are limiting these scoring chances for the opposition. So that's been great to see. But in kind of employing this defense first approach, this mentality here, it works on the road because you're going into another team's building and you're dictating the pace of the game and you're dictating the terms of the game and you're kind of flustering your opponent a little bit. And you were certainly taking the home crowd out of it when you play this way on the road and you kind of just take the air out of the puck a little bit, so to speak, and slow everything down. And again, focus on defensive hockey and sort of be counterpunchers. That works on the road. And I think it can galvanize the Ranger players like, oh man, this is fun. You know, we're shutting down this team in their barn and their fans aren't making a peep. By that same token, when you play this style at home, as the Rangers have, you're doing the same thing, but you're taking your own fans out of it. You know, Ranger fans, and we'll talk about them a little bit later because they were booing this team by the end of this game. They haven't really been making a lot of noise so far this season. And I know a lot of people are kind of getting on the fans for that. What have they had to cheer for? You know, it's been rough. They're winless, and they've been shut out in 4 out of 6 games at home so far this season. So I don't really blame the fans for any of this. But, you know, again, going back to this theory here, the whole home and away thing and why this approach works on the road better than at home, I look to a game like the recent 2-0 win over the Vancouver Canucks. It was not a game that's going to be remembered and talked about for years and years to come. It's not the kind of game that you show a friend of yours if you're trying to get them into hockey, but I had fun watching it because the Rangers, again, in that game, they basically just dictated the terms of play. What did the Canucks end up with? Like 13 shots on goal in that game? And the Rangers, despite not dominating on the scoreboard, they were in control of that game pretty much from start to finish, and they won 2-0. And that's a great, you know, road win game for the Rangers. But in games like this, you know, you're buzzing to start the night, but then you just don't have enough offensive firepower to keep everything going. And you certainly aren't doing enough to keep the fans invested in the game. And I think, you know, for the Rangers, we saw a lot of them getting frustrated. It can be kind of a disheartening situation when the game unfolds as it did last night. I mentioned that we were going to get to some stats here to really illustrate the Rangers' just complete futility at home so far this season. So 6 home games, right? Let's go ahead and remove the Sharks game from the equation. And I realize this is a little bit unfair to do this because, you know, it's by far their best home performance so far this season. They've scored more games or scored more goals in that game than they did in all the other home games combined so far this year. But let's take that Sharks game out of the equation. Sharks, by the way, 3rd to last place in the Western Conference. So we're removing, a weaker team from the equation in this instance. So first of all, you got the stat that they've been shut out 4 out of 6 times at home so far this season. That one I think we're pretty much all aware of. But let's take it a step farther. And again, removing the Sharks game from the equation, the Rangers in 5 home games, the other 5 home games other than the one against the Sharks, they have scored a grand total of 1 goal in 15 periods. That's not a misprint. I didn't just misspeak. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, that can't be right, can it? Yeah, that is right. That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely accurate right now. 1 goal in 15 periods of home games for the Rangers, you know, if we exclude the Sharks game. And it's one of those stats, it doesn't even seem possible. It sounds made up. You would think by dumb luck you would score a few more goals than 1 in 15 periods, but that's where things stand right now. And I realize this is a team that's lacking in scoring depth. It's obviously having a whole bunch of issues on the power play. Even with all that being the case, there is no reason that a team that boasts players like Panarin and JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad and Adam Fox, and I guess in theory, Alexis Lafreniere, and, you know, somebody like Will Cooley who's on the up and up, there's no way that a team like that should be scuffling this badly for any offense of any kind in its home building. But that's the reality of the situation. That's where we are right now. So here's another stat for you. The Rangers will now go at least until the 2nd week of November without a win in Madison Square Garden, because this Friday, Rangers are back in action, but it's on the road against Detroit. Then they are home against the Islanders in the 2nd game of a back-to-back on Saturday. and then they're at home against the Predators on Monday. If they don't win at least one of those 2 home games, I mean, what are we even going to say at that point? I mean, they'd be down to 0-8 at home, or 0-7-1, or 0-6-2, or whatever. They'd still be winless at home, whether they happen in overtime or not. That would just be insane. Here's another fun fact for you. And we're actually going to throw in a preseason stat here, which, I mean, I don't put a whole lot of stock in winning and losing in the preseason, but since we're talking about all the struggles at home, the Rangers in the preseason this year went 0-2-1. So you have to go all the way back to April 17th for the most recent home win of any kind by this New York Ranger team. They beat Tampa in the regular season finale on that night. And all this offensive struggles against a Canes team that, by the way, was missing, 3 of its best defensemen. So that's where things stand. And gotta obviously figure out at home, because this cannot continue like this. You have to figure out a way to take care of business, generate some offense in your barn, and obviously thus far, the Rangers have not been able to do that. So in just a second, we're going to sort of elaborate on the offensive struggles. We're going to focus specifically on the special teams for the New York Rangers, and even more specifically on the power play unit, which has honestly just been abysmal to start the season. But we'll get to all that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. In our next episode, it's going to probably drop late Friday night, because the Rangers are going to be back in action in Detroit against the Red Wings. I mean, it's on the road, so the Rangers will at least have a chance, I suppose. But yeah, that game will happen, and then we'll be back to talk about, whatever good, bad, or whatever happens in that game immediately after that happens. Might even do a live episode for that one, but we'll see. But for right now, let's take a look at the Rangers special teams falling apart. This was the first game, for me at least, where it felt like the Rangers truly got crushed by their special teams. And it's not like, the Canes ended up with 1 power play goal. I believe they were 1 for 3. The Rangers were 0 for 3 on the power play. I mean, it doesn't really look that damning, but to me, in this game, you really felt the impact of these special team struggles. And this is why. It's not even so much that they gave up a power play goal. It's how the Canes got onto the power play and what happened after back-to-back power plays that the Canes enjoyed in the first period. So there's a sequence in the first period with about 13 or 12 minutes to go, somewhere in that ballpark. Or 13 or 12 minutes into the game. So about 6 or 7 minutes to go in the first period. And up to this point, as I mentioned briefly earlier in today's show, the Rangers had played great. Again, they were buzzing in the offensive zone, a lot of scoring chances. They had a power play chance of their own. They didn't score on that because, of course, they didn't, but they at least had some good scoring chances on said power play. But then you get this sequence in the first period, getting fairly late in the first period. And the Rangers basically just took back-to-back penalties, and they were penalties that I don't think were all that necessary. I mean, they're not the worst penalties that you'll ever see in your life, especially if you're a fan of this Ranger team, but you had a slashing penalty on Gavrikov that I believe occurred in the neutral zone, approaching the Ranger zone, and then you had a penalty on Noah Laba right after this, where he was called for hooking. Now, that one was in the defensive zone, but it was along the boards, and I just didn't think that it really needed to happen. And bottom line, on the Gavrikov penalty, the Canes end up converting. They win a faceoff, and they score off of that faceoff. So there's the power play goal. They did not score on the second power play, but they had some opportunities. It seemed to get the Canes going a little bit, and it seemed to just completely take the wind out of the sails of the New York Rangers. After these back-to-back penalties the Rangers took in the first period, they were never the same. Again, the first 12 or 13 minutes of this contest, you will take that every single night if you're a fan of this New York Raider team, especially when you consider, how often slow starts have been an issue for this team. The slow start wasn't an issue here. Everything else was the issue. So again, to really illustrate my point and just kind of let you guys know what a stark difference it was. And if you guys watch the game, you're certainly aware, but there's a stat here to back it up. The Rangers in the first 13 minutes of this game had 13 shots on goal. Then they had the 2 penalties back to back. The rest of the way, the final 47 minutes or so, the Rangers had just 12 shots on goal. So, giving up the power play goal is one thing, and obviously you don't want to do that. The PK has mostly been good this season, but you're down 1-0 there. Honestly, the more damaging thing and the more concerning thing, more so than giving up a power play goal, because that's going to happen once in a while, is the way the Rangers responded after it. The way the Rangers played the rest of the game after surrendering this power play goal. It's like, dude, you don't have to act like you're a man down the entire rest of the game. You can get back to what you were doing at 5v5. By that point, again, the wind was out of their sails and it never really came back. I mean, I said earlier, and I wasn't joking, literally with every minute of this game, the Rangers got worse and worse. That is almost a literal statement. Certainly from one period to the next, it got worse and worse for the New York Rangers. And as for the Ranger power play, I mean, again, naturally, they were 0 for 3 in this game. They are now 4 for 36 on the season. 4 for 36. It was a strange night for this unit. Despite going 0 for 3, I mean, they at least looked good on the first 2 power plays. They had 4 shots on goal on their first power play. They had 6 shots on goal on their second power play, which is honestly, kind of difficult to do. All kinds of scoring chances, just could not finish. And then the third power play, they did not have any shots on goal. And that third power play was not good at all. The first 2 were good, but at a certain point, all this rings hollow. I mean, I'm tired of saying it. You guys are probably tired of listening to it. That the Rangers, that they create all these chances and they're snake bitten and they have bad luck and they get goalied and they just can't finish their chances. At a certain point, those excuses, again, they just kind of ring hollow, because if it happens once or twice, if the Rangers are unlucky once or twice early in the season, they hit the post a couple of times, the goalie stands on his head, whatever the case might be, the puck's laying on the goal line, it won't cross, bad puck luck, whatever it might be. It's okay if that happens once or twice. I mean, there's 82 games, and you're going to have a night like that where the puck just will not go into the net. But this has now become a trend. This has now become a part of the Rangers' identity, is that they can't score goals, and they can't finish their chances. They can set up chances, but they can't finish. I'm tired of talking about expected goals for. That's another one. I didn't even look at it today. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to know. I mean, honestly, in this game, I can't imagine that it was very favorable for the Rangers anyway. But again, you can cite stats like that if it happens once or twice. When it happens this often, and we're only 14 games into the season, the complete lack of finish, the ability to put the puck in the net, I mean, at a certain point, it's a problem, and it does become, as I just mentioned a second ago, part of your identity. As far as how to fix this, the power play, I mean, a little more traffic in front of the net would probably be good. We had Mike Sullivan say pretty much exactly that after this game. He felt that the Rangers didn't fight enough for positioning in the blue paint there, and I would tend to agree with that for sure. You could shake up the power play unit in terms of the personnel, but honestly, what even would the move be? Right now, the 5 guys on the top power play, and it's been this way pretty much since the start of the season, or at the very latest since the Vincent Trocheck injury. But the power play right now, you've got Lafreniere, you've got Fox, you've got Panarin, you've got Mika, and you've got JT. I mean, you could take somebody out of there. I know some people are calling for Artemi Panarin's head right now because he hasn't been doing anything recently. I know some people are down on Lafreniere, but who do you put in their position there? I mean, I guess Cooley, Cooley can maybe give you a net front presence. Maybe it's worth a shot there. Cooley for Lafreniere. I mean, I would at least consider that for sure. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. Connor Sheary, like Taylor Raddick, who are you going to put there? Even like Matt Rempe, who was on the second power play to start the season and was going to, just take up space and screen the goalie, he's not even an option right now. So it's slim pickings. Now, Vincent Trocheck is going to be back. We think sooner rather than later. It's starting to look like it's trending that way for Trocheck and the Rangers. And I think you can put him on the top power play. I think you probably want to do that because you need a shakeup of some kind. Honestly, though, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think the Rangers are going to do it because if you put Trocheck on the top unit, say in place of Lafreniere, now you've got your 3 centers all on the top power play. And it's like, I mean, I guess Noah Laba can start in the second power play unit. Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. Are the Rangers going to, though? No, I don't think they will. I think even when Trocheck gets back, you're going to see him on the second power play unit as opposed to the first. And the Rangers will just keep banging their head against the wall with the same 5 players. I was joking, but honestly kind of not, on social media last night after the Rangers' third power play failed. I was joking that just pick 5 names out of a hat for the next power play. Why not? There's certain guys that are out there working hard. Juuso Parssinen drew a penalty in this game in the first period after, a blue collar shift by his line. And it's like, dude, like, just let that guy out there for his power play. He's the guy that earned it. He's the guy that forced his opponent to trip him down. I mean, I'm not saying to do this often, but once in a while, like, reward the guy that drew the penalty. Just let him stay out there, assuming it's not like the end of like a minute and a half or a 2-minute shift. But if somebody earns the power play for the team, then they've earned the power play. Let them get a chance. Just do that once in a while. I'm not saying that should be like your go-to move, but once in a while, I do like that idea of rewarding somebody who draws the penalty. Just an idea. I mean, at this point, throw any idea, no matter how crazy, no matter how off the wall that it might be, that you'd like to see the Rangers do on the power play. Maybe we'll read those in a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Ways to fix the power play as presented by the fans of this team, because I don't think things can get all that worse right now. So no idea is too over the top or too zany to suggest right now. As far as like the power play and where it ranks, now dead last in the NHL at 11.1%. And this is one season after it finished fifth to last in the NHL at 17.6%. And this is a unit that for 3 years there, where things were good with the Rangers, was such a strength of this team. You know, the Rangers used to get criticized by their own fans and maybe even me a little bit, and certainly people around the NHL analysts, all the Ranger naysayers when the Rangers were actually good. And they used to get criticized for over-reliance on the power play. Yeah, right now, I would love to over-rely on the power play, because right now, there's no offense whatsoever. And the power play well has very clearly dried up, and something has to change. Sooner or later, you got to convert on some of these scoring opportunities and put the puck in the net. Because as I talked about earlier, this whole unlucky, getting goalied, puck luck, I mean, it just fails to hold water when it happens over and over and over and over again. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So in just a second, going to keep everything rolling. I want to talk about the power play, or we just talked about the power play. Well, we might touch on that a little bit in the next segment as well. But what the next segment is mostly going to cover is the third period of this game and why it was just as dull and as lifeless of a performance as you were going to see from any team ever. Just a boring third period. So we'll get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything, but when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it so easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it is all handled by real doctors. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off of your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use the code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, let's go wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about this just putrid performance by the Rangers in the third period. You know, a bad performance is one thing. This was just boring. That is the best word to describe the third period of this Ranger Canes game. Just absolutely boring. You know, I take notes watching these games, you know, and not going to use all of them for every episode, but I like to have a general idea of what's going on, and it makes it easier to, you know, obviously look back and remember certain plays. I wrote down like maybe two things in this third period, because that's where we were at right now with this game. There was nothing happening. As I mentioned, the only shot on goal of this period and of the last 28 minutes combined was a dump in by Sam Carrick. But there was something interesting that happened at the very end of this game with about 3 minutes and change remaining on the clock, and the Rangers down by 2 goals at that point. All of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, Braden Schneider laid a monstrous open ice hit on Taylor Hall and knocked him to the ice. His helmet went flying. I hope Hall's okay. You know, it looked like he was going to be okay. He got off the ice under his own power and everything like that. Obviously would never wish injury on anybody, but just a massive clean hit by Braden Schneider. And the reason I bring this up is because it kind of like snapped me out of it a little bit. Maybe it had the same effect on some of you guys as well. It's like, oh, right, I'm a human being. I can feel things. I can have emotions. I can get excited about what's happening in this game, or I can be mad about what's happening in this game. To this point, the entire second half of the second period and almost all of the third period just made you feel like you were like in this blank, mindless void. I mean, just watching this game, there is nothing happening. The Rangers are just not creating any chances. They can't get the puck in the offensive zone. When they do, nobody's shooting the puck. Guys looked like they were just kind of punching in and punching out for their shifts until, you know, somebody told them they could go home. And that's really disappointing, especially when you look at how good the Rangers looked to start this game and how badly they looked at the end of this game, once it came to crunch time. But this hit for Braden Schneider, it just kind of, it jolts you. It's like, oh, wow, something happened. Somebody on the Rangers actually did something. Didn't make a difference in the final score or anything like that, but at least was something that was, a highlight worthy play and something that will at least get your attention a little bit. And, one of the biggest reasons why the Rangers were losing games early this season is the fact that they were getting goalied. I mean, I know, again, nobody wants to hear these excuses, but facts are facts. It did happen a couple of times early this season. The two games that I really look to are the first matchup against the Oilers and certainly the 1-0 loss to the Caps. But we can't say that the Rangers got goalied in this game. Now, Kochetkov was very good. He made a couple of tough saves early in this game, but from the middle of the second period onward, and then certainly the third period, this dude could have been having a beer while standing between the pipes, and it wouldn't have made a difference. He didn't need his helmet. He didn't need his goalie pads. He didn't need his stick. Again, the only save that this guy had to make was on a dump in from Sam Carrick. Literally one of us could have made the save on that play. So he had about as easy of a night as an NHL goalie can possibly have, at least in the second half of this game. Again, just no jump, no energy from the Rangers, and they started to hear it from the fans as a result of what was, again, I mean, you have to say, a lackluster performance by this team. I don't know if you guys have realized this. Most of you probably have, but going to a Ranger game is not an inexpensive proposition, okay? These tickets are not cheap, and there's been a lot that's been said from a lot of Ranger fans about this, and the price gouging and whatnot, and it's just insane that the prices you have to pay, even for nosebleed seats, that stuff is all very true, and that stuff all has merit. So fans that are there, when they're subjected to a performance like this, I can't get mad at them for letting the Rangers have it a little bit. Can anyone really blame them? And Igor Shesterkin actually acknowledged this after the game. He was asked, what it's like being booed and how does that, make the team feel essentially. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but basically he said that, it's not fun, but he understands it. He gets it, and he knows that the fans want to see better hockey. Yes. At what point does that happen, though? Again, winless in 6 games at the Garden this season, 4 shutouts. It's been rough. And when you look at like the booing instances in this game, there were 2 that kind of stood out to me. One is actually a sarcastic cheer. We'll get to that one secondly. But there was an instance in the third period where the Rangers were obviously spinning their wheels. It looked like they were actually going to maybe have a decent chance, a decent rush into the zone. It was 3-on-2. And you had Lafreniere basically just losing control of the puck for no good reason and turning it over. Would have been a 3-on-2. That's when the boos started to rain down from the Garden faithful. Now, it has been a very long time since I feel like Ranger fans have specifically targeted this player or that player when he gets booed, to boo this player specifically every time he touches the puck. I mean, it's been a while. I think there was maybe just a very brief smattering of it with Mika Zibanejad last season. There was an instance where he fanned on a one-timer last year on the power play, and there were some boos, and that felt like it was maybe a little bit of a personal booing for Mika last year. We're close to that for Lafreniere. His play, I mean, the numbers are not good, and his play in general is not good either. I mean, he's just losing control of the puck and not able to handle simple passes. And then there's people that defend him. There was a play in this game where there was a great play by Noah Laba. He got in there like a maniac on the forecheck, dug the puck out of the corner. I mean, he didn't really dig it. He got to the puck and just, sent a pass very quickly to the front of the net. And Lafreniere, goes off his stick and goes wide of the net. It's a golden scoring chance, and he can't even put it on net. He's in deep. There's no one really all that close to him. I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but he hasn't been good enough. Like, I'm running out of ways to say it. And there's people that defend him and talk about like expected goals for and the underlying metrics. With other number 1 overall picks, we don't have to talk about the underlying metrics because they just go out there and do what they do. Matthew Schaefer right now on the Islanders. Rangers are going to play the Islanders soon. He's going to go off in that game. You know he's going off in that game. Fellow number 1 pick for Alexis Lafreniere. I wrote down this stat. Schaefer now has 5 goals and 6 assists in his first 13 games. He's 18 years old. He just turned 18 2 months ago, and he's a defenseman and not a forward. Lafreniere can't even hope for numbers like that right now. He can't even hope for performances like that. I mentioned the booing. There was also a sarcastic cheer. That occurred when the Rangers got their first and only shot on goal of the third period. That dump in from Sam Carrick. The fans are on top of this team, and they know what's happening right now, and they're not happy about it, and the sarcastic cheer wasn't like deafening or anything like that. But again, a smattering, I think, is probably the best word for it. But the fans are frustrated when it comes to the Rangers' performances at home. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this, listening to this, that are frustrated as well. Again, the good news is they're back on the road against Detroit in the next one. So they fared better on the road than at home, win that one, and then come home and try to accomplish the apparently Herculean task of winning a game in Madison Square Garden this season. We'll see if the Rangers can pull all of those things off. But we'll call it there. One more announcement here before we do call it. I'm going to be on vacation. I've got it in my phone here in November from November 15th through November 21st. So going to miss a couple of games there. Might record a couple of, short videos for YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the Ranger YouTube channel, then definitely do that now. We'll try to keep you guys posted on some things, but I'll be back after that and we'll hit the ground running and pick up right where we left off as far as Ranger hockey is concerned. But just wanted to let everybody know about that. I'll send a couple of reminders as we go forward here as well. But that will do it for today. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.